So, welcome. Today we are talking about the medicine wheel part two. So, we'll be going over the applications and daily life for processes and emotions as they relate to the medicine wheel. And then we will be doing a journey to one of the directions, trying to find where you are in a project or some emotional state that you're in, and we'll journey to whatever is appropriate for you on that. And then, as always, at the end, after we're done recording, anyone who wants to stay on and ask some questions or make comments that you don't want on the recording, then that's available to you at the end. So that's the agenda for today. So we'll go ahead and get started with calling in spirit. So just take a deep breath and settle in for a moment. Close your eyes and imagine you're out in a large open space in nature, maybe a field or a meadow. And in the center is a fire, connecting with the sacred elements of fire. And imagine now that there's water flowing around in a circle, however that looks to you. Connecting in with the ebb and flow of the element of water. And feeling the earth below you as you stand in this meadow or field, connecting with the nurturing energy of earth. And imagine that you can feel the cool breeze moving around you, breathing in that life-giving element of air. And imagine that we're all in a circle together around that fire. All the people on this call and anyone watching down the road, we're all there together. And send your love out to all the people in the circle. Feeling that go out to each person, thanking them for being here. And now open your heart center and imagine that everyone in the circle is welcoming you, taking in their love, appreciation, and acceptance of you exactly as you are and what you bring to the circle. And now call in any guides, helpers, angels, well ancestors, inviting them to come and be part of the circle. We ask Spirit to help us form a loving and supportive community. We ask for guidance and support in building connection with one another and to our spirit guides. We ask for help creating open, clear communication with our own spirit helpers so that we may be guided to live our best lives for our own highest good and the highest good of all those concerned. And having set this intention, we offer gratitude for all the people in the circle now and in the future. And we offer gratitude for all the spirit helpers who have come to support us today. And taking a nice deep breath in, offer love and gratitude to yourself for being here, for being you, loving yourself exactly as you are, as you show up in this space right now. Good. Now go ahead and in your own time, open your eyes and come back into ordinary reality, into the here and now. Thank you all for that. So by now, hopefully you've been doing some journeys to the different directions after our session during the last call, getting to know some of those directions and what they mean for you and how to work with each of them. Maybe you've been working on finding ways of pulling the natural rhythms of nature into your daily life. So building on that and the way that the medicine wheel connects us out to the natural world and bringing the natural world back into ourselves, and the way that we work with each direction and finding out what that means for each of us. We're going to go ahead and bring that process now into more of a psychological process. We're going to talk about the ways that the medicine wheel can move us through emotional states and building energy throughout projects or helping us get unstuck from different stages in life. So using the process through mental and emotional stages, that's what we're going to focus on today. And in the last call, we talked about the different stages, the different directions of the medicine wheel and how they relate to the stages in life. So I'll just review those a little bit. The east is the newborn, it's the young child, it's the curiosity, that fresh energy, that stage of being a baby, of being a newborn, being a toddler, taking in all the ideas and sensations of the world around you from that curious place. The south is the passion, it's the excitement, it's the joy of being a child, a young child. Actually, all the stages of childhood really past infancy. So it's the excitement, the joy, the unmitigated optimism of growing up and of gaining insight and knowledge of the things around you. That's the south. And the west is the young adult, moving into adulthood. Sorry, the west is young and middle adults, and the time when you take on more responsibility, where you begin practicing balance in your life. You're able to start making discernments and become more mature. So that's the west. And the north are those elder years. It's a place of slowing down, of resting, and of shifting your priorities, your focus from the self out towards the community. So it's disseminating that wisdom and teaching those things that you've learned to the people that are walking on the path behind you. So that's the north. And these stages can also be applied to projects and emotional stages in life. It can help you understand where you are in the process and also help you move forward into the next stage. So I'll talk about processes first, and then I'll apply emotional stages next. So with processes, we'll use the example of a project. A lot of processes can be thought of in terms of a project. So let's say that you're writing a book or you're starting a podcast, you're undertaking some creative project, or really any project. It can be a project at work, something that you're being, that doesn't feel so creative, or that you're not loving so much, but we all have projects in our lives in different ways. So we'll start again in the east. So that's the childhood, that's infancy, that's the baby, that's the toddler. And as far as a project, this is the brainstorming part. This is the percolating new ideas, the examining all possibilities. This is really where the potential, that first kernel, that seed is just starting to bud into a small plant. And you're spinning out maybe many ideas, or maybe just sitting in that creative space mentally, and just letting those ideas bubble up as you're doing other things, just letting them come to the forefront, all the possibilities. So thinking about, if you were writing a book, it might be just beginning to, think about, what if I wrote a book about this situation? This person is in this situation doing this thing. And you're thinking about who the characters might be, and all the many different ways the story might go, even including really, really crazy ways, things that you may not include later, but you're letting yourself just have all those unfiltered ideas. You might start making lists of things, but you're not really organizing them yet. You're just starting ideas. Um, so in this stage, and if you're comparing it with the podcast idea, this is what are the many things I might want to do a podcast on, and they might be wildly different from one another. And you might be thinking about, what if I'm very interested in both nutrition and underwater basket weaving? What if I did a podcast on how to create nutrition in some facet relating it to underwater basket weaving? Just playing with ideas. You're writing everything, spitting out ideas, and without really reining them in at this point. And so the pros to this stage is that it's super fun. It's fun, it's energetic. You get to spin out all of those ideas, be crazy, be wild. Really love all of the potential and the excitement of that potential. Some of the cons or the downsides is that it's so much fun in this stage that it can be scary to move forward. So it's entirely possible to stay in this stage and never take any action, even just by organizing those ideas or reining them in. It can feel, and also sometimes the creating so many ideas, and being in this stage for a long period of time might begin to feel like you're creating it's too big. There's too many ideas. I don't even know where to start. I want to do a podcast, but I have 10,000 things I'm interested in, and I'm not sure which one of those to go with. So those are some of sort of the setbacks, or the downsides of this stage. Too many possibilities can feel daunting. So then moving into the South, this is the childhood stage. And this is the passion stage. This is where you really get that excitement going. You really move, and that when we connect it to the natural wheel, or the natural side, the cycles of the wheel that we talked about in the last one. This is song, this is dance, this is fire, this is, burning with the energy of something. So it's the excitement that is building, all those ideas that you've been generating in the East. In that stage, now you're starting to, they're all kind of written down. You're starting to pull them into specific lists. You're starting to organize them a little bit, maybe crossing off some of the things that are not going to work out or too crazy. You're in the book writing example, you're starting to write out maybe some of the character profiles. Maybe you're putting some plot points down and a timeline, and playing around with different alternatives with that. And yeah, you're just winnowing down some of those crazy things. In the podcast, you're starting to select the names. You're starting to write maybe the intro and the outro. You're starting to buy the equipment and getting excited about speaking into that big microphone. So it's a really exciting stage, and you're just starting that organization part. And this can be, depending on the project, this might be a really long part. Sometimes the organization takes a while, but it's still generally the feeling, the vibe of the stage is still pretty high with energy and excitement. You're still really moving generally, hopefully. So the pros of this stage is starting to take action. So even if those actions are just, small lists and organizing, it's starting to feel like you're taking it out of the brain idea stage, where it's just sort of a mental exercise, and you're starting to take small steps. to organizing the work, and you're still feeling positive and excited and still in that place of potentiality. Um, some of the cons of the stage is feeling another place where it might be another place where you feel overwhelmed, where the amount of work starts to feel overwhelming. The amount of ideas might be hard to rein in. It might feel a little bit big, especially as you are starting to organize all of those ideas. You start to get some idea of the realistic timeline, how long it will take, how much work it's going to take. Those things start to formulate, they start to solidify a little bit in this stage. And sometimes that can shut people down. That can be intimidating. Just knowing that, oh my gosh, I want to write this whole novel, but look at all these different plot points, and how many pages will it take to write out each of those plot points, and that sort of thing. With the podcast idea, people might even start to, as they're looking around and finding all the different platforms and places to put it, they might start to notice how many other things are already out there, and oh my gosh, who's going to listen to my idea? So there can be some contraction in that stage, some self-editing in sort of a negative way. So then we move into the West. West is the adulthood. This is, generally speaking, the longest stage. So if you're writing the book, this is the writing part. This is where you sit down day after day and figure out the scenes and write one thing after the other. For the podcast, this is actually just, starting to do the recordings and figuring out, how writing out your outline and actually doing the recording and actually doing the editing for each one of those episodes, actually writing out the story notes for each of those episodes. So it's basically the brunt of the work once you've already got the organization and the plan down. So then when this is the get her done stage, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of mistakes. So this is the growing stage. That's the beauty of this stage, is that nothing will happen without this stage. Without this stage, you're not actually getting anything done. It's the meat of the project. And it's where you get to learn and grow the most. You get to become a master of your own project. You get to find out what the obstacles to your project are going to be. And then you begin to learn how to overcome them, how to surmount them, what to do next, what works, what doesn't work. So those are the pros. Some of the cons, probably pretty obvious in this one, the length of time and work. The investment that's going to have to be involved can shut people down. It's a very easy stage to stall out in. People start to lose some of that passion and fire from the South and start to become mired down and overwhelmed this is water, the element of water. So sometimes you feel like you're treading water for so damn long that it starts to feel stale. It starts to get old, and you start to lose some of that, the fire and the passion and the why the hell am I doing this in the first place? So overwhelm can be one of the downsides. Also, those rose-colored glasses that you were wearing with all that fire and passion in the beginning, you didn't know how hard the work was going to be, because when you're in the planning stage, you haven't tried things. So anyone who knows me will know how quickly I get shut down when I can't figure out how the hell to work technology. So, you're doing something, you're excited, you love it, but you can't get A to talk to B in your technology or whatever. It's showing up to write that book day after day after day when, oh my gosh, this thing in my life is now going on. And I told myself I'd write every morning, but now I have XYZ in the morning, and how am I going to make all of that work? So there are unpredictable stumbling blocks. And then there are also, just unexpected amount of work. There's always, I feel in my life personally, and you guys can think about whether this is true for you, whatever I think a project is going to take, no matter how much time or how much work. I've heard some folks that teach on these sort of things say, whatever time you give yourself, double it, because it's always going to take more than you expect. So that's what happens in the West. As you're getting those things done, it starts to, you realize now you're coming into the reality, and those rose-colored glasses start to come off as you thought like, oh, I'll get this done in 2 weeks, no problem. And 2 weeks has turned into 2 months and you're still not done. So that can be some of the sort of pitfalls of that stage. And then lastly, there's the north. Yay, we did it, we did it. This is the wrapping up stage. This is the rest. This is the time to take a deep breath and congratulate yourself. You've written the book, you've edited the book, you've made it the best that you can, and now you're sending it out to publishers. So you may not be 100% done. There may still be a little bit of work. Maybe you've got your podcast, it's out in the real world, and now your people are emailing you and reaching out, and you're trying to get it out on social media, or maybe you're trying to find places to advertise or be a guest so that you can talk about it. Those sorts of things. You might be still sort of marketing or whatever, but the brunt of it is done. You've written the book, but you're still trying to find a publisher or decide whether to self-publish. They're smaller, they might be impactful decisions that you're working on, but for the most part, the project is done, and all that's left is maybe just some gentle managing of it. And in this stage, it's always important to remember the resting and being positive and congratulating yourself, staying focused on what you have accomplished. And then also taking some time to rest in order to get to the next stage, because we never want to stall out on the wheel. We always want to be doing something. We don't want to, when we stall out on the wheel, that's when we get mired in our own addictions. That's when we watch Netflix and eat Ben and Jerry's all day. Not that I would know anything about that. If anyone has ever tried the Netflix and chill, if you have not tried the Netflix and chill Ben and Jerry's, I advise that you don't, because it's extremely addictive. But yeah, this is, if you don't pick up and continue on the wheel, this is your life. You got to be doing something. You got to be moving forward. You got to have some kind of passion, some kind of enjoyment, some kind of outlet for your own creativity and those projects and ways that you want to grow as a person. So you do need to rest, and you do need to be open and listen to those little intuitive hits, listen to your guides, check in, what's next. And resting is part of that process. So sometimes people you could become mired too much in the stalling out and not moving forward, but you can also rest. You can not take any rest. Those type A personalities that just want to move into the next thing without rest. But it's good to really take time to take in the information. This is the wisdom stage. So what did this project teach me? What did I learn? What can I apply to future projects? What things do I have I'm gaining some mastery on that I might want to apply to other things, and or turn around and see who's behind me coming along the path and see if I can offer anything. So the pros of this stage is that you do get to rest. You've learned, you've grown, you've finished something. You have expertise now that you didn't when you started. Even if these are really small projects and small accomplishments, there's always some stumbling block that you figured out a way around. And that's knowledge, that's information, that's growth. That's some level of expertise. So congratulate yourself for that. Again, it's a time to rest and pause, and to be generous. Help other people and share what you've learned, and come from that place of cooperation and knowing that if you've done it, other people can do it, and not seeing that as a downside, as competition. So some of the places where people get stuck in the cons, right on the border between the West and the North lives perfectionism. And perfectionism will keep you from moving. It can keep you from moving into the North. So you're still in that working stage of the West, and you just can't get it right, can't get it right. Everything has to be 100% perfect. But I find that this relates, in my opinion, more to the North. Again, everyone's going to be different, so follow your own path here. But the North is when you've got that painting done and you just keep tinkering with it. You've got that book done and you just keep editing that one scene until it's so different that it started that now it doesn't fit in with the book at all, and now you have to decide how to fix that. You can perfectionize, you can edit until something disintegrates in front of you. And so that can happen in the North, where the North, you need to let the project go. It needs to go out into the world, and you need to release every attachment to it. So some of the cons are not being able to release it into the world because you're still too focused on details, and you can't bring yourself to feel it's good enough. And so you need it to be perfect, and you can't release it as a good enough. You have to release it when it's perfect. And we all know how perfection doesn't exist, right? So, so people can get mired in that. That's one of the cons in the North. Also, as I started to allude to, too much attachment to the success of the project. So in the North, people can get stuck rather than what the wisdom piece of it, rather than becoming that elder. They start becoming infantile again, and taking on the project as identity. And this is something really important, I think. Separating that project, think if that project is something that you've birthed into the world, and okay, it's not a baby. You're not going to let a baby go out into the world by itself, but somehow you magically birthed an adult. And that adult has spread wings and it is flying. You're kicking it out of the nest. It's done. And what it does is not you. It doesn't reflect you. You are you, and your project is your project. And if people love it, you are still you. If people hate it, you are still you. So it's not getting attached to how it's perceived in the world. Stay in the place of congratulating yourself. Stay in the place of being what you've learned, what you've done, and being grateful to yourself, and being proud of yourself for completing it, not being proud of yourself for how people feel about it. So separating that identity. I am me. This was my story. If people hate my story, they don't hate me. They hate my story. And that's okay. I did my best. I got it to good enough, and I put it out in the world, and I feel good about it. And if you don't like it, everybody has their own opinion, and that's 100% fine. Lots of things that I don't like. So other people put work into them. I get to not like them. They don't have to take that personally, because I don't know that person. And what do I care about them? And that's the same way people are feeling about your project. So, even if it's a project that's at work, so even if it does reflect on you personally, again, if you did your best, move through the stages, working through them, doing your best, focus on what you've learned. There are going to be asshole bosses out there, right? There are going to be people who don't appreciate the work and things like that. Don't let it be something that you take so personally that you're feeling like it's a mark against you. You did your best, you put it out in the world. And I know that's hard when it is a boss, or it's somebody who does have control over how this project impacts you personally. And of course, some of the projects we're putting out in the world, we're hoping to earn money from, whether it's from work, or we wrote a book in order for people to buy, and we hope they like it, but we also hope that it sells magnificently and we become, the next Stephen King or whatever. So I get that, and it does relate to who you are, but just remember that this is one project, and the wheel keeps moving, and you keep learning from it, and then you take that wisdom and knowledge into the next one. And so if your book didn't do well, just write another one. Who knows? There are many, many books out there where there are many authors who will tell you that they didn't get a bestseller until their third or fourth book in, and then all of a sudden everybody wanted to read everything that they've ever written. So John Grisham, third book that was popular. Then everybody wanted to read his first and second shots to the bestseller list when they had been, almost out of publication. They were such duds. So just stay in that optimistic place. That's the next place that you move into, is back again into the East, the optimism, the joy, the joie de vivre. So don't let second book syndrome. That's the other one, is the pressure. The pressure is also a con in the North. You have put something out in the world, and maybe it was a hit, or maybe it just took, oh my God, so much time and work. And that's okay. But don't let those things shut you down. With writers, there's always that interview where people get you've written this and it was so great. What are you going to do next? And a lot of writers will shut down at that point, especially if it's successful, which you think success would spur you forward and help you be excited about the next book. But it can actually really put a lot of pressure on that next book, or that next project, if the first one did really, really well. So again, this is all part of putting that project out into the world, letting it fly, letting it be its own thing, and letting it go, separating yourself from it, and just moving on, learning your lessons, taking your rest, congratulating yourself, and then move back into the East on whatever ideas are coming up for you. So using the wheel to get unstuck from a stage, when you apply these ideas, you can kind of see how there's a flow of one into the next, and you don't have to move. You don't have to move in one direction. So for example, if you're stuck in the West and you're mired in the work and you've just lost that enthusiasm, go back and do a journey and pull that power back up from the east, or excuse me, from the south. Or you could do the east, but the south is a really good place. It's got the song, it's got the dance, it's got fire. Pull some of that energy back, do a journey. You can journey into your project. So ask your guides to help you journey into the project, into the feeling and the emotion of the east. You don't have to move back into the work of the east and actually start editing lists and writing down what, I keep saying east, excuse me, I mean the south. You don't have to actually go backwards into the south and scrap everything and start over at making lists and ideas and writing character sketches. But if you have those, revisit them, take a look at them. Look at all these lists, look at all these fun things. They might bring the energy back, but you can just use your journeying with your guides and journey to the south and let the south know, I'm missing the passion, I'm missing the fire. I want to get excited about this idea again. I want to stay in the west where I'm doing the work, where I'm the adult and getting things done, but I want to pull the energy of the south into it and just do a journey and feel that energy coming back in. Ask for messages, what you can do to reinvigorate your project. So those are kind of ways that you can skip around the wheel and find different parts of it. And if you're stuck in a stage, so let's say that you are stuck in the south and all you're doing is writing down lists and ideas and organizing, but you're not actually sitting down to write that book every day. You're not actually recording a podcast yet, an actual episode. Then you can journey forward, journey into the west, and find out what that feels like, what that looks like. See yourself doing the work and bring that into yourself. And hypnosis, this is a big part of the process. Many times we'll do a forward progression and really let people feel what it feels like to be in that energy of that next stage, of that future that you want to see, and then bringing that energy forward or to you. So that's, you can, in that way, you can use the wheel to bring different stages, to bring yourself out of different stages, reinvigorate different stages, pull the energies of whatever stage that you're needing. And you can journey just to the stage that you're in if you're feeling stuck there. Why am I stuck? Where is it going? Why is this happening? What do I need to do to get to the next stage? So using your journeying and your guides to move yourself around. That's the beauty of the wheel, is you can move in any direction. So let's see, where am I on my notes here? So again, so I'm going to go over just some of the questions. So we've gone over kind of the pros and cons of each stage, but I'm going to just list some of the questions that might be common, places, things to ask in those journeys to help you get unstuck from that stage or help you learn from that stage. So in the East, again, this is the idea generation. So I'm stuck in idea generation stage and I'm not taking any action. How can I take action? What can I do? What can I do to take it out of that mental space of just percolating ideas and at least start writing some of them down, or narrowing them down, winnowing them down. So in the South, the East is pretty easy, just because that's really all you're doing in the East. If you're stuck in that, it's mental energy. So it's just, how do I get out of the mental energy and move it forward? There's not a whole lot of complication to that usually. But again, everyone's different, and use your guides and ask the questions that you feel you need. In the South, I'm writing lists, I'm taking steps to organize, but I'm not doing anything with them. So how can I move? How can I start going from list building to taking steps? That's a big help or focus in the South. In the West, I'm stalled out and getting overwhelmed with the big picture instead of taking one step at a time. What can I do to take one step at a time? It might be I'm overly perfectionistic and not allowing my project to get finished. How can I help? How can you help me finish the project? I'm allowing stumbling blocks to shut me down. Help me see a way to learn from these opportunities and see it as a practice. I'm becoming too fearful of what people will think of my project, and I'm worried I'll fail. So those are all kind of some energies to think about in the West to move you forward. In the North, am I putting too much? Am I putting the project out into the world? Did I actually release it? Or am I holding on to some finished thing? You know, back in the day, it used to be a finished manuscript sitting in a drawer. Now it's sitting in an electronic drawer somewhere on a computer. But you know, did I put it out into the world? What do I need to do that? Did I leave the electronic version in the drawer? Am I feeling competitive and protective rather than using my lessons to be open and to teach, to share my expertise? Do I feel intimidated about starting a new project? Am I stalling out in that North stage? Just staying in the rest? Am I overly invested in the outcome of the project as though it's a measure of who I am as a person? And am I not taking the proper rest and self-care before moving into the next stage? So that type A personality that just wants to keep moving, that doesn't want, there's some detriment to not letting those lessons sink in because they're important. And if you buzz right by them, you won't notice them. And then you won't really be able to take them into the next project and use them. So ask yourself where you are and what you need to move on, wherever you are in the stage that you're in. Do you need to revisit the passion of the South and renew your energy? Do you need to accept the current process as good enough and let it go? Are you stuck in a stage because you're afraid of the next stage? That's a really easy question. It doesn't even need to be specific. And you know, you can just ask your guides, why am I stuck here? And am I stuck here? Maybe sometimes you're there for a reason. There's something you're not quite getting or catching on to. So journeying to those directions, and you can get more information, but just start with identifying where you think you are on the wheel and where your project is. And sometimes just knowing that is enough to take you to the next stage. You realize you're in the South and you're excited, but you're list building and you're not doing anything with it. And you don't need to take a journey to figure that out. Then you can just use the wheel to, okay, so what's the next stage? It's adulthood, it's the West, it's water. How do I use that water to get some motion, some flowing, some movement into action steps? So are there any questions on any of that so far? All right. So the next part, I'm going to talk about emotional stages. So far we've talked about how to use the medicine wheel for processes, for projects. Now we're going to talk about using it for emotional stages. This is a little bit harder to quantify for each person, harder to qualify for each person because you know, every emotional stage is different and every person is unique and everything that's brought you to that emotional stage is different. So these are going to be some generalities, but as always, work with your guides and journey with them and ask them what you need, and anything that doesn't apply that I'm saying here, throw it on out the window and don't use it. So with emotional stages, you want to just kind of feel where you are age wise. I say age like the stage. Are you the infant? Is it brand new? Are you a child? It's newish, but not brand new. Adult, or is this something that's been going on for a really long time? So I'm going to use a couple of examples of emotional states, one of grief and the other one of burnout. So those are two really pretty different kinds of emotional state emotions that we can get stuck in or that we want to move through in certain ways. So just again, figuring out where you are in the process. With grief, it can be relatively easy because you're looking at how long has it been since the loss. If you've just lost someone, you're in the East. You're just beginning the process. You've had the loss and you're just starting to feel it. You're just starting to sit with that. So it can be shock, it can be unwillingness to accept, it can be denial. Lots of people have written tons of books on the stages of grief, so I won't get into all of those. And it varies for every person, and people move back and forth through them. Just like the wheel, we can go back and forth to different things. So the East generally with grief though is the early stages, that beginning. stages and all of the how can this person have left me, I can't quite believe it stage, or if someone's died, then how can it, how can this person be dead? I just talked to them yesterday. Like, your brain can't wrap around that. And it doesn't have to be with a person. Obviously grief can be lots of different things, but so the other one, moving into the East and burnout, the burnout example, a lot of times with something like burnout and some other emotions, they come on slowly, so slowly that people don't realize that they're in it in the beginning. So the East with things like burnout is a stage that people just don't notice. By the time they notice that they're in burnout, they're already further along in the wheel. So that's why, again, just kind of noticing, looking at where you're at and how long you've been sitting there helps you figure out where you are on the wheel. In the East with burnout, you might be slightly aware of not feeling the same excitement about work or a project, or even the drama of something like COVID. In the beginning, we were all freaked out about it, but before we were super burned out about it, first there was a lot of drama, and sometimes that can have its own sort of energy and excitement, and what's going to happen tomorrow. So when you're in the East, by the time you get to the point that you're actually burning out in it, where that sense of stress is actually starting to get to you, you probably have already blown right through the East. So the South, this is the childhood stage. With grief, it might look like things like the questioning stage, like a child questions, why is this happening? How is this possible? What does it mean? Like a child, and with grief, you're asking a lot of questions a lot of times, moving into the South. With burnout, it might be you're starting to feel it, you're starting to become consciously aware of something not quite being right, but maybe not fully aware of it yet. So maybe you're irritable, maybe you're grouchy, maybe you haven't consciously become aware of feeling burned out, but you're sort of being driven by those unconscious feelings of dissatisfaction. And maybe that's making you, maybe you're acting grouchy, maybe you're feeling bad about not being into it so much. So sometimes this stage with burnout, you can pile on because you're already feeling the burnout, but then you're not aware of feeling the burnout. And so you're starting to have some shame or self-criticism about, why am I so grouchy all the time? Why am I being short with my coworkers? Why am I picking arguments with my family and friends? Those are some common things with that childhood stage of grief or burnout and grief. So then you move into the West. This is the adult direction. This is, again, where the work happens. It's often the longest time that you're in. When you're beginning to bring the conscious feelings, you're starting to try, and you're not in with grief, you're not in shock anymore. You've accepted it, but now you're starting to figure out what to do with it. And with burnout, you've started to become consciously aware of it. You're starting to realize, this is why I'm grouchy. This is how I'm feeling. So usually by the West, again, it's the work. It's where you're bringing the conscious feelings into it, the consciousness into it, and you're trying to drive it in a certain direction. So with grief, maybe you're joining grief groups, maybe you're seeing a therapist, maybe you're reading or looking for tools that can help you with the process, understand the process, and move through the process. You're trying to learn how to be yourself and maintain that sense of self while also feeling the feelings of grief, and finding yourself, because grief can be a really changing event. When you have a loss, you can feel that you've lost yourself in the process because this thing is so overwhelming. And of course, not all grief is overwhelming. We have little losses all the time. But in the West, you're often trying to find yourself. Who am I now with this loss, and how do I be in the world as both the person that I once was, and also the person who now holds this event that's happened. So a widow might be needing to find out how they're both the persona of the widow and also the person that they used to be. If it's a loss like a breakup, you might find ways of learning to experience letting go of resentment and not allowing the person's actions to define who you are. So again, it's a lot of sort of defining and using tools, defining who you are, finding yourself in the process, and finding tools to move forward. With burnout, you're kind of taking inventory of the situation. So why am I feeling so burned out? What's changed? how has it changed? Is it something I need to, is it something I need to get out of? Am I just so burned out at a job that I just don't want to do this work anymore? Or is there something that I can shift and change to make it more enjoyable, to get back to that earlier energy, when I used to enjoy the project before I was burned out on it? So, um, what kind of, it might be all about self-care and shifting things and setting boundaries, or it might be you might also be looking into, maybe I need to throw this out entirely and start something else. Maybe I'm this burnout is teaching me this is something that I don't actually want to do. So the West is, again, where you're kind of doing the work, you're figuring out what the work is, what the tools are, how to move through them, how to make decisions, and how to move forward. And the North is the elder stage. So you've learned how to navigate those emotional states, and it's time to take a rest and congratulate yourself and take some learning and growing forward. So you recognizing that you've gotten through it, and even if it's an ongoing, a lot of these processes are ongoing. There's rarely an emotional state that we only come to one time. But if you've gone through a cycle of something, again, the wheel is all about movement and cycle. So if you've come through a process of an emotional state, give yourself credit for doing that. Do not focus on the things that you wish that you could have done better. My gosh, I got so grouchy with my friends and family, and I'm just going to focus on how I should have done better. Congratulate yourself for getting through it. Congratulate yourself for being a survivor through it, and doing the best that you can. And if you have amends to make, that's okay. Make those too, but don't beat yourself up over it. Just reach out, make your sincere apologies, tell the people, hey, I was going through this thing, and here's how I acted, and here's how I worry that it might have impacted you. And if it did, I apologize for that. And then let it go, because you're only responsible for your half of it. The other person then does what they do. And if they yell and they're angry, that's okay. You can still let it go. So this North stage is taking in what you've learned from those emotional states, congratulating yourself, focusing on what you did right, focusing on that you did the best that you could. And if you made some serious missteps that have impacted other people, do what you can to make amends if it's appropriate, and then let it go, move on. Don't let it get stuck. Don't become stuck, and because now then you're moving out of that burnout or out of that grief and into shame and blame. And we don't want to create another stuck cycle to have to go through. So be easy with yourself, be gentle with yourself, be compassionate with yourself. Any questions on any of that? We moved through that fast. It's a little harder to apply the process to emotions without having specific scenarios, but that's kind of just a general idea of how you can use that. And again, it's going to look really, really different. And the whole purpose of this course is getting you connected with your guides and your own intuition. So check in with them and develop that. And if you're ready, we are going to jump into a journey next. Examples. Okay, so I'm getting some feedback with some examples of emotional stages. I'm trying to think of there's so many. Where do you start? I would say the times that I've done this most, burnout is one that I chose because I have felt burnout at a lot of different types of jobs. I've done a lot of different types of work that didn't really fit my needs, my personality, what was right for me. And I think a lot of us have to do that sometimes. What I would do going through the wheel is find out, again, where am I on it? So, but again, burnout is one that you often don't notice, but there have been times. So, one job in particular, kind of toxic environment. And I found myself going home and just being really grouchy, super, super grouchy. And I realized, that this, in the beginning, the job itself was one that seemed like it was going to be more creative. It was a writer position. I was really excited to be moving into professional writing. But oh my gosh, just toxic from the top down. The owners were there. It was a small company. They were on site. And one of them in particular made it really difficult for everyone. So I took a look at where am I? But I think by the time I noticed it, I was probably well into the West. I was well into being an adult. The adult stage, I'd been grouchy for a while. I'd been feeling it for a while. I'd been going on for a while. And I just wasn't wanting to bring the conscious process into it because I wanted to hold on to being the excitement in the beginning of that job and that project of being paid to be a writer was such a big deal to me at that time. So I used all those questions on the wheel. Am I in the right place? So first of all, is this something that I need to change? Is this something I need to get out of entirely, or are there changes that I need to make? So in the beginning, I went with trying to make those changes. I did journeying and checked in with my guides, and as always, they're big on meditation. Finding that quiet time, letting things go, learning to, catch myself when I'm bringing in mindfulness and catching myself when I'm spinning out on just an event was so irritating to me that I can't stop thinking about it, and I won't stop thinking about it. And it's almost like so juicy that I just don't want to let it go. I just want to keep thinking of all the angles of how this person was so messed up and how could they have done this and blah, 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 and how it affects everything else. And it's an ongoing cycle. So I realized that I was internalizing that toxicity and taking it on as my own. So during asking those questions, and I reached out for tools, and the tool, found some ways to, again, meditation. I do tapping, a lot of just mindfulness and just noticing when I've got a juicy bone in my mouth that I'm growling and I won't let anyone take away, and just, letting it go. So I did try that. And actually that made it a lot better, because I tried really hard each day to set the intention of today, I'm just going to go in and focus on my work and focus on the day and do my best, knowing again that we're not perfect. I'm going to do my best to let other things just wash off me and notice that, and let other people's problems be other people's problems. And if the boss asks me something to do that I think is totally ridiculous, guess what? It's her company. So I signed on to do that. I'm being paid to do that. Even if I know it's going to screw things up, I'm doing what I'm told. So I kind of went with that attitude in as much as I could. And then there was definitely a time where after checking in, after doing that and giving that a shot, it was time to move out of that. I did eventually realize that's not a good situation. I started, I got my resume ready. But while I tried to remain in focus with being present in the moment and making the moment the best I could, instead of taking my energy all into the future, I'll be happy when I find another job. I'll be happy when I get the hell out of this place. I'll be happy when. And so I try to just be mindful, stay present in the moment, stay in the West, keep trying to work on finding those tools for myself. And then eventually I did move into another job, and that was a better situation, except for the commute. Don't ever commute from Portland, Hillsborough. But that was a better job. It was a better situation. I was still a writer. I was being paid twice as much for being a writer. It was much, much better situation, except for the commute. And then I moved into the West with it. So, okay, I've let go. I've used my tools the best I can to stay in this situation. I've used those tools then to find out that this isn't the best situation. I moved into the North and became the elder. Then I could use those skills that I had built up. And man, that was a blessing of a situation, because it really honed my skills at being able to let things roll off a little bit better. Not that I'm perfect at it, not that anyone is, but I was able to, because then of course in the next office, it was a much bigger office with even more complicated interpersonal, communication and relationships, and there's always downsides. And so I was able to just not get mired into that as much. All of the practice that I'd done in the West and this other job, I'm now bringing into as an elder, using that to apply those lessons. And my God, that job felt like a rest. So taking that rest in the North, I got to just breathe for a while. In the beginning at a new job, you're all in the trainings part of it, where no one expects much of you yet, because they know that you're just figuring it out and you're learning everything. So it was a nice deep breath, and it was a nice break from everything. So that's kind of how I used it to get through, as an example of moving through the emotional state. But it's very common to not notice where you are on an emotional state till you're further along. Unless it's something like grief. If someone just dies, you know that you're in grief. I mean, that's a given. But a lot of our emotional states, we don't really consciously become aware of them until we start to notice our behavior changing in ways that we don't want it to. We're starting to feel cranky all the time. We're starting to snipe at people that we don't mean to or want to. We're starting to have negative thoughts all the time. We're starting to feel tired and, fatigue and all those things that those mental states bring on. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so we are going to do a journey. The journey is going to be to either project or emotional state that you're in. So think for a minute about something that you are working on, either, burnout, an emotional state, maybe you're feeling down or low energy, those sorts of emotional states that you just don't know what's going on, or you want some movement forward, or a project that you're working on, something that you've always wanted to do, something maybe that you've already started to do, but you're a little bit stalled out on, maybe something that you're right in the middle of, but could just use some rejuvenation or some direction. So take a minute to just think about something like that, how you can apply it. And we're going to call in your spirit guide or your power animal, because we're always going to journey with them, and we'll set the intention, which I'll kind of say a little bit. I'll give you a little bit of a starter statement to set the intention when you call in your guide. And then we're going to journey to whatever direction feels right. So you'll set your intention to your guide to take you to the direction that you're in, or the direction that you need to learn from. And then I'll just give you some prompts to ask some questions of that direction, and just get as much information as you can. And then we'll just bring you back. And I've said this before, but when you come out of a journey, it's a non-ordinary reality, which is somewhat dreamlike, and we tend to lose information quickly. So if you don't already have something to write with, go ahead and grab pen and paper, or your phone or something to take some notes on. And I'll do some chatting, just some housekeeping stuff about that you can watch either later on the recording, or also you've heard it all before. So you can be taking some notes while I chatter away about some of that information. All right, so I'm going to change the sound, because I figured out with help from a friend how to make the sound catch my drumming. Let's see. Okay. So let me do a test run here and see. You hear that? Yay! Okay. So go ahead and find a comfortable spot and settle in for a moment. And take just a few deep breaths, noticing your body, noticing your breath. And then go in your mind to that beautiful place in nature where you call out to your power animal or spirit guide. Go ahead and call that power animal or that spirit guide in now. And tell your guide that you want to travel to one of the directions that's going to help you the most with this project or emotion. Go ahead and let them know what that project or emotion is. And ask your guide to take you in that direction, the direction that's most right for you. Go ahead and journey now to that direction. And when you come to the direction, tell the direction about your project or your emotional state. Ask them what you need or want to know about it. you're not getting anything, ask if it's the right direction for you to be asking. You might ask if you're in the right stage or if it's time to move on. You might ask what you need to do to follow through. If you do need to move to the next stage, you might ask your power animal or guide to take you there. energy that's needed. It's time to come back by saying thank you to the direction and have your guide take you back the way you came, back to ordinary reality. Good. So thank you guys. Hopefully you've been practicing those journeys. I know we do them a little bit quickly here, but the more you practice them, the more you'll be able to really get into that. So do practice going to, just meeting with your guide, practice going to the different directions and seeing how they work for you, and applying those in your life. You can draw on the energies. I know someone asked me for an example in the last one after. So one example of applying it the way we talked about in the last call was every morning, like I've talked about, I do my time at my altar, and I call in my guides and my energies, and I have my daily routine. But sometimes I have a special routine. I want to call in all the directions. I want to call in all the arsenal that I have for something. So one example of that was I had surgery a few years ago, and I was really nervous about it. I'm the kind of person that, if I severed my own arm, I'd probably try and sew it back on before going to the doctor. So going in for surgery was like a really big deal for me. And that morning beforehand, I called in all of the directions. I met with all of the directions, asking for each, the strength for each one, and then called in all of my guides. And then it just made it a really powerful morning ritual. So that's one example that somebody had asked for in the last call. So if you guys want to go ahead and be making some notes about your journey while I just wrap up this isn't anything that is dire for you to hear, but as always, go ahead and write in the topics, use Mighty Networks to tell us how you are doing. Help lift up other people, tell other people, comment on other people and how they're doing. Use the topics to talk about your experiences, share some pics with your altar, ask questions, just generally showing up for the group and the community. And the next call, we're going to be talking about using your altar and your guides to create power objects, and also for protection. So that is going to be our next call in 2 weeks. So I'll put that in Mighty Networks, and you can RSVP and show up for that, or just wait for the recording. So that you have that to look forward to. Yeah, and any other questions, anything that comes up, we'd love to have that discussion. And between now and the next call, go ahead and use that process, use the directions, both the medicine wheel, both to apply to your connecting you to nature. And today we talked about the mental process. In the first one, we talked about how detrimental disconnecting from nature is on our psyche. So one of the things that you can do to help yourself through those processes and those emotional states that we talked about today is connecting with nature, using the medicine wheel as a self-care tool to connect with the rhythms of nature, connecting that with the rhythms of your body, the rhythms of your day, the rhythms of your sleep, those kinds of things, to really just find ways to connect back in. And that's a great way to just help yourself in general. It's a really wonderful self-care tool. So use the medicine wheel, practice going to different directions, practice going to the different elements in the different directions, just practice journeying in general, using journeys for things that you're actually doing in your life and getting answers and information. And that's what it's all about. Once you really get good at that, you never have to pay a professional again if you don't want to, because you've got all of that support, all that help, all that love, all that light, all that healing. It's super available to you. Nothing wrong with going to professionals, of course, and we can always use some outside help and direction sometimes, but this is all about bringing up that ability to find those answers from your own higher self, your own team of spirit helpers that is available to you. So thank you for being part of the call today, and I'm going to end the recording. And if anyone wants to stay on and ask questions without being on the recording, you are welcome to do that.